Hi once again. In this truly remarkable position, White has set the task to deliver checkmate in 12 moves. Now, this is the sort of problem that tests the solver's ability to manipulate a minimal force. So as can be seen, there aren't that many pieces left on the board. It is a long problem, but it is absolutely necessary that it takes the requisite number of moves, otherwise you would never be able to solve this, probably at all. Just note the following points. Number one, White's key move could be either of two moves, but it only works with one. Point number two, once the key is found, all of Black's replies are more or less forced, and all with his king. Point number three, it is imperative that White maintains protection of the h-pawn. And it has to be with the rook by implication, because the bishop is the wrong colour square. Point number four, White must find devices to combat Black's threat to stalemate. For instance, should White do something like this, then it will be stalemate on the move. So that has to be avoided at all costs. Point number five, if White's rook were on h5, in other words, like that, it would be a mate in 6. Unbelievable, isn't it? But it's a fact. It would be a mate in 6. And I'll demonstrate that at the end of this problem. So let's just put that back for the moment. So what we're looking at here is getting White's rook onto h5. That's the point. Point number 6. Which type of device is employed to counter the stalemate, and how many times is it used? Indeed, there are many questions and points here. Can you see the key move? Just take a look at that position, the key move. First of all, which piece would you say? Well, he can't move the pawn, and moving the king doesn't achieve anything at the moment. And moving the rook is inadvisable, because if he did move that rook to h5 at once, he's not going to achieve his objective. Test that for yourselves, but he's not. He can't play rook h5 on the first move. He can't play rook anywhere on the first move. And so that leaves the bishop. Now, where does he play it? And what is he wanting to do? I've just demonstrated that if he played to here, it would be stalemate. If he checks, the king is just going to go back and forth. There's nothing to be gained from the bishop coming this way. So that has ruled out everything other than bishop to g7 or bishop to f8. Which one is it and why? Can you see which one it is and why? Well, you have to think several moves ahead here. Well, you can pause this anytime you want, or come back to it anytime you want. What I'll do is I'll give the key move and we'll go through the 12 moves, and then I'll demonstrate what I was saying just a moment ago, that you can halve the number of moves if this rook could be on h5. Not the first move, rook to h5, but if the rook were there and then it's White's move. That's the point. So he needs to play for time. This is why it takes an extra 6 moves to get to the stage where he would have his rook on h5 and be able to deliver checkmate in the remaining 6 moves. Well, the key move is to here. And as to why it is vital that we play it to f8 and not g7 will become clear. It won't become clear immediately because it looks as though it really doesn't make any difference. Now, why is it that it doesn't look as though it makes any difference? Well, because Black's king goes here. That's the first move. Now, the second move is to put Black in check. Now, you'd agree that if we'd played bishop g7, he could play bishop e5. He could, yes. So the king goes back to g1. And the pawn goes back on g2. That's 2 moves. So I was mentioning in my point number 4 and also in point number 6 which type of device is employed here to do away with any possibility of stalemate, and how many times is it employed? Well, white on his third move plays to here. It's the Indian theme. He's masking the bishop, and that's the first time that he's employed it, but it will happen again. So what does black do? Well, on his third move he plays king to h2. Now, how does white proceed? You remember I did mention it's imperative that this pawn be protected. So on the fourth move, white plays here, check, and he's protecting the pawn. So fourth move for black is back to g1. This is going to get very monotonous for black, but there's nothing that he can do to stop it. So what does white play on his fifth move? Okay, he plays to here. And you see what's happening? That's the second time the Indian theme has been employed, so black again has no option but to go back to here. So how does white continue? Right, well what he does is he plays here. Check. That's the sixth move. So, what happens? Well, the king has to go back. It can't get out of this toing and froing. It's shuffling back between g1 and h2. So, what does white do here? Well, you remember I did mention what is the difference between playing bishop g7 or bishop f8. Now, if he had played bishop g7, the bishop would be here. Now, what is the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is, let's put it back and we'll show you white's next move, which is this. He's playing the Indian theme for a third time. That's the problem with it. You can play it there when you played bishop f8 and bishop d6, but not if you played bishop g7 and bishop e5. So, black goes back. What do we do now? Well, I did mention that you need to protect this pawn, so we play here. And do you see what's happened? We have the rook on h5. Admittedly, the bishop has gone from here to here, so we're a couple of moves ahead here. Now then, what does black do? Well, he has to go back. And what does white do here? Well, he has stopped employing his rook maneuver, but he has not finished with the Indian theme yet. And this is by no means obvious, and it took some working out, I can assure you. So what does white do here then? Okay, well, he plays here. Now, what is he wanting to do here? Well, he's wanting to coax the black king to the f line. It doesn't really make any difference whether he moves king f1 or king f2. Let's just play king to f2. What do we do now? Right, well, now we put him in check. Rook f5. You notice what's happening here now. Black is stopped from going back to h2 and threatening this pawn, so the rook is free to move. So what can he do in this position? He's forced to go back to g1, isn't he? Now this is the most difficult stage, the critical stage. How does white win this game? In two more moves. I did say there's one more Indian theme. Can you see it? Well, clearly putting the rook in front of the bishop wouldn't do any good. But what about the bishop in front of the rook? That's it. Bishop to f4. It jumped out at me when I thought, no, I can't solve this, and then I found it. And it proved to be correct. So this is another 100%er for me, and I'm very pleased indeed about it. I'm learning some stuff here, and I hope you are too. Bishop f4. Now, it doesn't matter whether he plays to here. What do you do there? Well, what you do there is you play here. And that is checkmate. Now, what about if he goes to f2? Like that. Playing there wouldn't do any good because he'd slip away to g3. So what do? Right, you play here. And that is checkmate. Isn't that a wonderful problem? But just to go back to what I was saying, you can halve the number of moves if you start with your rook. This was the starting position of this problem. But let's just say the starting position were here. Right, we'll go through it together and we'll count the moves. We'll play bishop to f8. Clearly it has to be here, because if you played here, your bishop would be in the way of your rook. So you must play bishop f8 and not bishop g7. He has to go here. That's one move. Two moves. Now what? You don't do anything with the rook? No. You play the king here on the third move. Four moves. Right? Do you see the position? Yep. Back it goes. Five moves. Yep. Remember? Yep. Six moves. So you can cut it back by 50% simply by having the rook on h5, but it must be there so that then you can start the bishop maneuver. Isn't that a wonderful problem? And hats off to the composer. Well done to anyone who solved this. Goodbye for now.